Hey everyone, welcome back this week to There's Hope Ministries. Again, my name is Mike Bradshaw. It's good to have you with us again. So thankful, excited that you take the time to join us again for this week's lesson we'll be looking at here shortly. First of all, I want to say happy Independence Day as I'm filming this on Independence Day on Thursday, and we'll post it, of course, a couple days later. But want to hope that you've had a good weekend and a good time, possibly with family, and you've been safe and no incidents or no accidents, and we've just been able to enjoy and be reminded of the goodness of God to our country, the United States of America. Again, certainly we continue to believe the best country in the world only because of God's blessing on this country. And we know that it's not perfect, and there's a lot of things we deal with, but we still must be thankful and just grateful to God that He's allowed it, and we're just thankful for that. So I want to get right into the lesson this week. Again, if you're with us over the last several weeks, begin a study out of the book of Psalm 139, and we're looking at some of the great attributes of God. And over the last 4 weeks, we're able to look at the omniscience of God. And simply that is that God has knowledge of all things. He sees all. There's nothing that escapes what He can see and know, because He's omniscient. Again, He knows everything, sees everything, and we're thankful for that. What a blessing it is, and what a really an inspiration and an encouragement to our hope. And we'll look at this week. We begin another attribute out of Psalm 139. We'll read some verses here in just a minute. This week's lesson is entitled the Omnipresent One. The first lesson, the Omniscient One, and now the Omnipresent One. Again, this is an attribute of God. Let me explain a couple of things about that. First of all, an attribute is a quality or property or unique characteristic of something. So we talk about the attribute of God. Again, it's a unique characteristic. God's moral, we reason to believe, of course, first of all, that to be God, He must possess certain basic qualities, an attribute, a quality or property or that's unique in the characteristic of God. We also know that when it comes to the attributes, we know that God possesses moral attributes, and some of those things, or many, some of those things, is that He's holy, He's righteous, He's merciful, God is love, God is faithful and true and perfect, and there's many more, and those are His moral attributes. What we're looking at is God's natural attributes. And again, I mentioned He's omniscient, He's all-knowing, He sees all things, and we've mentioned that over the last several weeks. He has all knowledge. Nothing is hidden from the Lord. He sees everything. Think about this. The wonderful thought about that is that nothing escapes the knowledge and vision of God. So let me say this. He sees you. He sees where you are. He sees what road or path that you're on, whatever it might be. He sees what you face or what you deal with. And that's a wonderful and encouraging thing to know, that if you're going through a difficult time, God sees it. If you're on a difficult road or path, God sees it. He sees where you are. That's a wonderful, encouraging thought. And we find this second attribute as He is omnipresent. And simply, again, what that means is that He is everywhere present at one time, one the same time. Again, everywhere present. Be careful. I'll explain something here in a minute. I speak about the omniscience of God. God is, and the omnipresence of God. But we have to understand this, and we'll get more into this as I read these verses in Psalm 139, beginning with verse 7. Again, it says, "Whither shall I go from thy spirit, or whither shall I flee from thy presence?" is what the psalmist wrote. Verse 8, Psalm 139, verse 8, if I ascend up into heaven, thou art there. And this phrase, if I ascend up into heaven, thou art there. If I make my bed in hell, behold, thou art there. He goes on to say there in verse 9, if I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost parts of the sea, verse 10 says, even there shall thy hand lead me, and thy right hand shall hold me. I think about what the psalmist is acknowledging here, the contrast of whether if possible to ascend to heaven, God's there. If you were able to ascend into the depths of hell, it says that he's there. Even there, it says, shall thy hand, first of all, lead me, and thy right hand shall hold me. I think about the wonderful thought, how exciting it is to know that wherever we go, God's there. And for a child of God, that not only will he lead us, but it says his hand shall hold me. It goes on to say there in verse number 11, if I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, even the night shall be light about me. And verse 12 says, yea, the darkness hideth not from thee, but the night shineth as the day. And it goes on to say at the close of verse 12, the darkness and the light are both alike to thee. Think about that. There's nothing, no place that we can go where God is not going to be there. Darkness, if many try to do things and get away with it in the night or in darkness, God is there. It's just like in the nighttime, to God, it's just like the daytime. He can't be hidden. He's everywhere present. Now, let me say this, as I mentioned concerning the omnipresence of God. We are looking at that God is omnipresent, but we think about the omnipresence of God. The belief here we need to understand is from Psalm 139 that God is everywhere, but he is not in everything. God is omnipresent, but some get confused about when they think about the omnipresence of God, that God is everywhere, but we must understand, based on the Word of God, that he is not in everything. Let me explain that. The belief that he is in everything is pantheism. Pantheism is the doctrine or belief that God and the universe are one and the same, that God is everything and everything is God. Now, let's think about the danger of that thinking, that false teaching, the doctrine that God and the universe are one. We understand if God were in everything, that all men would have to do is to bow down to a stone or a tree or any object, and he would be worshiping God. That's the teaching behind pantheism, that we understand that God is everywhere, but he is not in everything. That's a false teaching based on the Word of God. We cannot worship a tree and say we're worshiping God. We cannot worship the moon or the sun or the stars and say we're worshiping God. That's totally incorrect. Again, if God were in everything, if he was in everything, then all that man would have to do is worship something that was created. Now, let me help you understand what the Word of God says in Romans chapter 1, verse 22, verse 23, and verse 25. Familiar verses. It says in Romans 1:22, professing themselves to be wise, they become fools, and change the glory of the incorruptible God into an image made like unto corruptible man, and to birds, and to four-footed beasts, and creeping things, who changed the truth of God into a lie, and worshipped and served the creature, the creation, more than the Creator, who is blessed forevermore. So think about the false teaching on pantheism, that God is not in everything. He is everywhere. He's omnipresent. But his presence is not in everything. That's a false teaching, a false belief that causes men to say, I can go out in the woods and I can just worship out in nature, and then I'm worshiping God. Can you go out into the woods and worship God? Absolutely. As long as we're meditating on the Creator, not the creation, not what He has created. So think about this. So we know that God is not in everything, but He is everywhere present. God is omnipresent. He's the omnipresent one. Let me explain a couple of verses we read there. In Psalm 139, verses 9 and verse 10, it says, if I take the wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost part of the sea, even there shall thy hand lead me, and thy right hand shall hold me. Think about what the psalmist was acknowledging, that even if one could fly from east to west, there is no escape from the presence of God. It goes on to say again, if I take wings of the morning and dwell in the uttermost part of the sea. And we have to understand really the biblical language behind that. When it talks about the fleeing to the uttermost part of the sea, it's talking about in their land, the furthest point of the Mediterranean Sea. But the point is here that the psalmist is acknowledging what we need to understand about God being omnipresent, that even if one could fly from east to west, there is no escape from God's presence. We understand, if you'll remember in the case of Jonah, that Jonah tried to flee from the presence of the Lord. And what happened? He paid a price, didn't he? Jonah chapter 1, verse 3. Verse 11 and 12 of Psalm 139 says, if I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, and even the night shall be a light about me, he acknowledged, yea, the darkness hideth not from thee, but the night shineth as the day, the darkness and light are both alike unto thee. So again, we find here that God's all-seeing eyes penetrate even the darkness. There's no difference with God that if someone would say or try to live in a way that we do it under the cover of darkness, God sees it. The darkness is like light to God. It goes on to say, as we read there, that the darkness and light are both alike unto thee. The Proverbs chapter 15, verse 3 says, the eyes of the Lord are in every place, beholding, yes, the evil and the good. The eyes of the Lord are every place. There's no place we can escape from the presence of God. Again, it talks about His omniscience. He is all knowledgeable. He sees all things, but also He's omnipresent. So this, in closing, it should strengthen our hope as we think about God's omnipresence, that God is everywhere present. And as His people, we are guaranteed His divine presence, His divine leading and guidance. Think about how wonderful that is, to know that we can go nowhere where God is not there. As a child of God, that should stir our hope. It should strengthen our hope to know that no matter what we go through and what road we're on and what difficult we face, that God is there with us. There's no place that we can go that He will not be present with us. You remember the Great Commission in Matthew chapter 28, verse 20. At the end of verse 20, it says, and lo, I am with you always, even unto the end of the world. And we also understand in Hebrews chapter 13, verse 5, at the close of verse 5, it says, for He has said, I will never leave thee nor forsake thee. So think about this at close. As God's people, whatever we go through or what we're currently going through, whatever we face, we have the divine assurance that not only He has knowledge of it, He's omniscient, but also He is and will be with us always, because God is present, everywhere present. He's omnipresent. What a wonderful thing. I hope it's a blessing and encouragement as we think about these thoughts, these attributes of God. That first of all, He's omniscient, He's all knowledgeable, He sees all, but He's also omnipresent. He's with us everywhere. We have that promise, that divine assurance, that not only does He have knowledge and see us where we are in life, but also He is always and will always be with us. Hey, God bless you. Thank you for tuning in. Again, my name is Mike Bradshaw. This is There is Hope Ministries. We believe the world stands in need of hope, but we also believe that Jesus is still the answer. God bless you.